People no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? Funny story. Moments after I was unceremoniously fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient, the bosses who fired me demanded to know the whereabouts of a hugely important computer file I had worked on. I refused to help them. I even cited the exact language of the NDA I was compelled to sign. I'm prohibited from disclosing details of my employment with anyone, including past and current employees of the company, I expounded, adding, so ask someone who works here, because I don't. It was a great fuck you moment that I still cherish 5 years later, but now I think I can disclose the truth. I only hid behind the NDA language because I had no clue where to find their damn computer file point or even where to look. I suck with computers. The cake/cupcake shop I used to work for claimed everything was homemade, but used Pillsbury cake mix as a base. I read a thread, I think it was a confessions thread on AskReddit, where a woman who ran a super successful home bakery business was literally just using Pillsbury cake mix, and this is how I learned what Pillsbury was, as we don't have it in England. She had the odd hack or two, and was seriously good at decorating apparently, but she was essentially just using cake mix. She even talked about how she felt like a fraud, got nauseous about going to the grocery store, and hated the sight or taste of cake. I remember this. She would log in once every few years and give updates. Last I read, she stopped doing cakes because it became too much for her. My mom does cakes as a side gig, and while she makes her own frosting from scratch, she uses boxed cake mix that she too passes off as her own. Probably way more common than anyone lets on. My graphic designer best friend won my town's Design the Centennial logo contest, despite having never set foot in the town. I worked for the radio station, and just did an interview with one of the organizers, where he lamented that there weren't very many entries. So I called my friend and said, "Wanted on this?" He said, "Sure." As he lived on the other side of the country at the time, I spent the next day texting him photos of the town for inspiration. Anyway, when he won, and they found out he was a professional graphic designer who lived on the other side of the country, they made him and me sign NDAs, because the town was afraid people would think they brought in a ringer. Edit. Wow, this kind of blew up. So let me answer some of the more common questions being brought up. What's a ringer? A ringer is a professional who's brought into a contest in order to guarantee favored results. Why did I have to sign the NDA? Well, they unveiled the logo at a great big ceremony where they presented the prize money. I think it was a couple $100, and since my friend lived on the other side of the country, he asked if I could accept on his behalf. I wound up not going, because we were broadcasting from another event that day, so the mayor accepted on his behalf. Where is this? Canada. A small town in Alberta. That's all I'm comfortable sharing. How did they make you? They threatened to withhold the prize and you threatened to tell the public, which would be way worse PR-wise than what their loan wanted the NDA for. Presumably if they didn't sign the NDA, they wouldn't have picked the design. Did you hear? They whispered, keenly, so clandestine, so obscenely, so unseemly, so maligning, so extremely violent climbing wicked crimes were here enacted, here portrayed and here protracted, here achieved with evil pleasure far beyond the scope to measure. What? Perhaps you ask with wonder, tore this very town asunder, split and rent the peace and order of this place from bound to border. What? I hear your consternation. Dread and fear and trepidation, lit the spark on such a candle. 'Twas a scandal. 'Twas a scandal. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency, but I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center, for instance, JPL, Kennedy, American Englishes, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers, so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission and a lot of dollars to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. American Englishes can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge, collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. That's not at all different from how the big national labs used to work. The rivalry between Lawrence Livermore and Los Alamos is almost legendary. Supposedly they got better about sharing, but it wouldn't shock me if they were still up to the same hijinks. Not just true for NASA, true for many government agencies. The issue is that money is zero sum, and if one program is getting money, it is getting cut from another program. So everyone is fighting to get their share and avoid having to make staffing cuts. Fixing this would probably require a fundamental change in the executive branch as well as the appropriations process. We would have to move from a leadership system in which you have new political appointees coming in every few years who aren't familiar with the programs to permanent leadership who are focused on making all the different sub-agency departments work synergistically. Appropriations would have to change to have predictable funding levels for each program for several years. I dug up some ancient bones, gold, and Mycenaean tombs. I couldn't discuss the finds until the institution who ran the archaeological dig could publish the data. You can read about it here. Edit. I'm a classics student, not the one running the whole dig, but my role in it was very much legal and official lol. We knew to dig there because there was another tomb next to it, and it's located near a big Mycenaean Bronze Age palace. I only dug there for one summer, but it was a blast. If you're interested in archaeology, you should see if there are any local groups that you can volunteer with. This might be the coolest and least shady response. Alright, deleted. As a lawyer, I viewed a lot of these and taught settlements. The most common use of the NDA is to keep the award amount quiet so everyone won't sue the company hoping to get that sweet settlement money. Edit. Several people have me about their NDAs, and if they can talk about this or that. I'm not your lawyer. I don't give legal advice to non-clients. You shouldn't take legal advice from strangers on Reddit. But it's called a settlement because you settled the matter. Let it go. You got the hush money, now do the hush. I used to do data analysis of revenue management for some big companies. Many companies have no clue about their data or their revenue streams. I'm talking several $1 million of revenue disappearing in the pipeline and no one knowing what happened with it, or even caring really. There were multiple times I had to inform clients that we had huge gaps in their costs and we needed to find the missing numbers somewhere in order to make our final reports correct, and was met with the paraphrased reply, just sprinkle the missing costs over the existing one. We just want the final total to be correct. All the companies cared about if the amount of money they have at the end of the year is higher than at the beginning, and anything that happens in between is inconsequential. I objected at first to my bosses, saying that what we were doing was incorrect, but they said to just do as the client said. In the end, I got disillusioned, and whenever our clients came with requests that made no mathematical or logical sense, I'd just execute as requested, and let their analysts figure out later that the analysis they paid 6 figures for was basically nonsense. I didn't care, because I had documentation of all their requests and my objections which were thoroughly ignored. I had a few cases where clients came back disgruntled several months down the line after some in-house analyst had done a deep dive of their data and came up with objections that I had pointed out months before. I'd usually dig up the relevant emails and clear my name. My choice of action was to tell them to pound sand, but my bosses always bent over backwards for clients, so we'd have to do the cleanup I anticipated. In the end, I learned most of our economy is held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. At most 10% of people working at big companies are competent and carry the bulk of the work, and rarely are the competent ones the ones in charge. Edit. I want to clarify something for everyone who's talking about embezzlement and people lining their pockets. I can assure you that in the data I was working on, this was very unlikely. The money streams I was analyzing went to other companies as costs, so if they had literally disappeared, someone would notice. This missing money was really just a case of utter incompetence. People just too lazy or stupid to properly keep track of what goes where. I'm sure that if we got all the data from partnering companies, we would eventually be able to track everything precisely. We were unfortunately limited to whatever data our clients provided, and we would rarely get data from other companies as they're quite privy about sharing it with third parties. This rant was not about corruption but rather incompetence. Well, this is already public knowledge, and they forgot to have me sign an NDA anyway, but Savannah College of Art and Design's Ombudsman Sophia Bagnoli, the independent person who's supposed to represent students in cases of unfair treatment by the school, married one of the school's vice presidents too, and is now Sophia Leto. It's definitely a conflict of interest, but she's still serving as independent ombudsman, and currently refusing to help students get any kind of refund, now that all their classes are online and they don't have access to the expensive equipment their expensive tuition is supposed to be paying for. Edit. Wow, this blew up. For anyone affected by SCAD, whether it was the abrupt closure of the Hong Kong campus, financial burden, lack of access to facilities, poor e-learning quality, etc., you do still have recourse, even if the ombudsman may be working against you. SCAD's accreditation is up for review with SaxCock this year. SaxCock will accept written complaints mailed to their office. Link below. Make sure to include documentation. Things advertised by admissions, emails, financial statements, etc. That, unfortunately, seems to be the only way to make them improve. https://saxcock.org/documents/KEYWORD=COMPLAINTNTYPE=POLICIES. Edit 2. Sorry, I almost forgot. There were a large number of Chinese students who were accepted and given the standard due date for their enrollment fee of a few months, but then, after the outbreak of COVID-19, received another email from your admissions rep demanding payment of the enrollment fee within 3 days. That is not okay. Whether you paid the fee or not, please take the time to file a complaint with SaxCock and send them that material, both the acceptance documents and the later email demanding payment in 3 days. I may be remembering incorrectly, but doesn't SCAD have a lot of issues with student health, including abnormal attempted suicide rates with students? Wouldn't that fall under unfair treatment by the school? This seems really problematic. The owner of the company is an absolute psycho. They have been trying to hire developers for years now, and despite paying really well, they can't keep them. I quit after 3 days. I was trying to help out on a high priority bug on my 3rd day when I said all the requests to X endpoint are failing, to which he replied, I see 1 out of 500 requests succeeding. Does that sound like all to you? He then called a company-wide all-hands meeting and proceeded to tell everyone how important it is that we all speak carefully and that we don't need fucking retards like me lying to the company making it harder to diagnose issues. I told him to go fuck himself and quit on the spot. Turns out the company has a big history of this. My boss, who had been there for 2 weeks, had tried to quit the week prior, but was convinced to stay on to meet me. He left a few days after me. Apparently a few people got together and tried to tell the owner that he needs to watch how he talks to people, and he blew up on them about it too. I later heard that I was something like the 10th person to quit within their first month in a row. The sad truth is that the dude actually seems pretty smart, but has been acting like a megalomaniac while he pisses his money away and abuses his employees that are for whatever reason unwilling to leave.